Oh wait, the bots.
Yep.
Inside at last.
Welcome, fellow Taffers, to Inside at Last,
Out of here after all.
the one and only thief-dedicated podcast. My name is Alex, and today I am joined by Jake and Seth. And sorry for the strange sounds you heard there, but we're still getting used to the streaming stuff. Jake, Seth, hello, welcome, and welcome, chat.
Hey, hi, hello, and hey to the chat.
Hope everybody's well.
Yeah, we try this new format. So please, chat, let us know if you can hear us well, and you can see what's going on the. There's not much going on the screen, but if everybody is hearable in a good manner, and yeah, we have this format because we thought like, oh, there are some topics that aren't big enough to create a whole episode about them, but they are interesting to talk about anyways. And I stumbled upon some things from Reddit, and then Seth came up with this topic. Oh yeah, the Thief IP was bought, and let's discuss it on the podcast. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. But since it's an interesting topic anyways, then I thought, hey, let's do it in this format. So let's see how it goes, where it leads us. And Seth,
Yo,
since you
I'm so excited.
since you wanted to discuss the Embracer Group buys Square Enix, I would say Western Studios. What is it? Eidos Montreal, Crystal Dynamics, and the other one?
Square Enix. Squeenix.
No, not the whole Square Enix. It's just the divisions from the West. I see. I saw how well informed you are. So you wanted to talk about it. So please inform everybody what's it all about.
For sure. So I don't know how many of you know. So I will just get out in front of it by mentioning that I do work in game dev. So I'm interested in this because I work at a company that has a very interesting arrangement with an international company. So I work for Sharp End Studio in Hamilton, and we have an arrangement with Microprose International, and we work with Microprose Canada, which is something that each company invests a certain amount in, and we make games together. So when
sorry, one question. Microprose, is it like the Microprose that we know from the 90s?
It is.
But it's just like a part division, like some leftover part of the company, because Microprose isn't in the real business for years, right?
No, it's really in business. They're developing games. I'm not at liberty to talk about their projects.
Of course.
But yeah, they are active, and we do work with them.
Really? Okay, that's very interesting. Didn't know that, because I know Microprose from. What did they do? They did I think, simulation games.
Civ.
Civilization, right?
XCOM.
Pirates.
B-17.
And didn't they even do Grand Prix series, the Formula One games by Jeff Kremen?
I'm not sure. They might have published them. So Microprose is more of a publisher than a developer these days. But they have. They work with a lot of really great studios and good talent to put stuff out. So without trying to sound too much like an ad for Microprose. But yeah, because of that relationship, I was really interested when this got bought, because as far as I can tell, Embracer has a similar relationship to its studios that Microprose has. And that means that they essentially get to pick who makes Thief 5 if it gets made. So what I'm interested in discussing is like who we think they're going to pick to do that. Because I actually am not familiar with the other studios that Embracer Group owns, and I'm wondering if you guys have any idea.
I would go. I think Eidos Montreal in general has the potential, and since we all know that the Thief 4 development was a mess, and I think Square Enix had many fingers in the decision makings. That was the actual problem, I would say, because Deus Ex actually was good. Or maybe Crystal Dynamics, I don't know. They have huge potential.
I'd be interested in seeing Crystal Dynamics do it, because I don't know what's Crystal Dynamics done since the last thing I remember them doing, I think, was the last Legacy of Kain game.
Tomb Raider?
Did they do a Tomb Raider recently? Okay, so maybe they can't take it on another project.
Yeah, they're working on Tomb Raider, and they're working on Perfect Dark with Microsoft. So they're
Perfect Dark.
Yep,
that's exciting.
Ooh, that's very fitting, actually. Maybe they do the Perfect Dark project.
There we go. So, what would a Perfect Dark project be? Would it be a remaster, perhaps?
They're doing a reboot.
A Perfect Dark.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very interesting. What we because one of the questions we will discuss today will be the original trilogy remaster, and I think we have to make sure, because I think there's sometimes some definition confusions about a remaster and a remaster.
That's for sure.
So let's maybe agree on that. So my definition is, if it's a remaster, then it's based on the original engine, like the Mass Effect trilogy that was remastered, or maybe the Warcraft Reforged. It was the same engine, but they updated it and stuff. So that is my definition of a remaster. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I concur.
I feel like for when you're working in games, sometimes working with the original engine is not always the best choice, right? Sometimes a port is like pretty necessary in order to make the best use of.
But it's based on the assets and stuff from the original. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, I'd say that as long as it's based on the designs of the original, you can make subtle changes that improve quality of life. So, like, I would say that a remaster, in my opinion, would be like, it could be in an entirely new engine, it could use entirely new assets, but as long as it was faithful to the original level designs and the original state trees for the AI, so they behave the same or were inspired by, with like marginal improvements for quality of life, that I would call a remaster. I wouldn't call it a reboot. A reboot would be like
the Tomb Raider series, for example, the trilogy, recent
exactly.
one. Yeah. What would you aim for a remaster or for a reboot for Thief?
I'd want a reboot. I wouldn't want a remaster. I'd be afraid of a remaster because I think that the original design is very pure and like the intent is very clear, and a remaster might muddy the waters. What do you think, Jake?
I honestly, it's strange because I don't know if I'd want a sequel necessarily, like an actual like sequel that has continuity with Thief 3. I know originally they were planning on doing Thief Dagger of Ways, and was going to do something with Thief 4 before Ion Storm closed. But I would say, like, if I had to choose, I want a remaster, just because like I do want, even though these games are accessible with T-Fix and stuff like that, it's still not super accessible to the general audience. I think getting them on console would be cool to bring them to a bigger audience. I think that maybe making things like T-Fix official and actually making a Thief 1 and 2 remaster would be great. But if I had to choose between like a full-blown remake, a sequel, or reboot, I probably would also choose like some sort of reboot personally.
Yeah,
for kind of the reasons you said, Seth.
I would agree. I would also aim for a reboot, because I think if you do a remaster, you will never satisfy the old fans, and I think you will not catch really new fans, because and I actually think that we already have a remaster for Thief 1 and 2 since the New Dark. I think that does, and the Taffers patcher and stuff, that does things what a remaster would also do, maybe. Like,
I suppose. But what if we had a remaster in a better engine, like Unreal, something more accessible and more moddable, might I add?
Yeah, but it wouldn't give it wouldn't be able to have the same feeling, because I think the Dark engine, you can base Thief 3 on that because it's already made in Unreal 2.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that with the original games, where the gameplay is totally different, the whole movement system, what I said so often in the podcast, like the first games, they are so, the engine, it's easy to read, the movement is easy to learn, hard to master, but it just works, And I think everything after that, even with Thief 3, it wasn't like clicking that much, like the Thief feeling. So you cannot reproduce that, in my opinion. So you do a reboot, so then you can say, yeah, it's a totally new thing. It's Thief, and maybe we are aware of the story, and we get to all the different parties and what people love about it, and rope arrows, of course. But
I'm leaning towards agreeing with you now, like based on the argument that you can get away from some of the stigma and the expectations. But what I was going to say about like just a remaster is that you could do a remaster in a different engine and package it with the original game, because you don't want to lose, like, we have such a huge heritage in fan missions, right? And like, you want the new audience that's going to come on with the remaster or the reboot to realize that there's there's decades, literal decades of fan missions to play, and you don't want them to have to buy a second product to get into that, right? So like, what if whatever they did, they packaged the original couple of games with it?
Yeah, but what's the purpose
for packaging the games? Well, first, added value. Secondly, you give whoever is coming into the new series the ability to play fan missions by packaging it with the original engine.
So are you now for a reboot or remaster? Because that wasn't clear to me.
I am still on the fence about either, but I'm saying in either case, you could package the original games with it. Like American McGee's
with the reboot.
Alice did that.
With the reboot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Oh, sorry, good, Seth.
Oh, that's okay. I don't know if you ever played American McGee's Alice, which was a platformer on the Quake 3 engine, but it had a sequel, and the sequel came with a remastered version of the original, and it was great because people were able to buy one game and play two, right? They were able to see, this is where this game came from, and I get the sequel. It was a good deal.
I think, to me, the value of having a remaster, I agree with what you said, Alex. I don't think it's not going to sell like 5 million copies if they remaster Thief. It's still going to be something that's kind of niche, but I think you would catch those, perhaps if you make it compatible with consoles. Like, you're going to get some new people, because I mean, we see there's posts on the subreddit all the time about like, I have a Xbox, someone says I have an Xbox, I want to play Thief, is there any way to do this, and things like that. So I think there'd be added benefit there is to remaster it so that you can actually add some controller support and stuff like that. And also there is, a subset of PC gamers who, I'm not one of these people, but there is people that are like, I don't want to install all these different programs. And, it is easy, but you maybe catch some of those lazier people too. So that's kind of the value that I see in a remaster. I think you're going to get some new people, but I agree that it's not going to be, it's still going to be a niche thing. So that's kind of the value I see in it, is just to kind of get a couple more eyes on the series.
What would you do if you were in charge of the reboot?
What would I do?
Yeah, it's a deep question, but what would you do?
I mean, fundamentally, the first thing you need the light and shadows and sound-based gameplay to be on par with the original games, if not better. So, you have to look at that and build from there, because they really haven't, no games have really had that. We've talked about that before. So that's like step one, I think.
What about you, Alex?
I would actually say leave it as it is.
You wouldn't change anything?
Don't do it. Actually, for me, of course, I was a bit sad, like when you read that there was one interview where someone was asked from Square Enix, like, hey, would there ever be a new Thief after Thief 2014? And he was just laughing and like, no. And for me, it was like, yeah, just leave it be. You will never satisfy old fans, and I think maybe the series isn't made for new things without compromises, or you have to totally change things in the game, and then it's not a Thief game anymore, and then we have the same discussion like, oh, would it be a good game if it wasn't a Thief game? But if I look at the Embracer Group and how they handle things, and from what I know is that they actually let the studios do their work, and they're not interfering too much. I would say you should, of course, give it to a competent studio. Maybe just make it AA. I don't think that it's so beneficial if you have the fanciest stuff in there, but the gameplay is shitty. Maybe give it to Crystal Dynamics or give it to Eidos Montreal. I would actually trust them on this with if they get to do their thing, without too much interference from outside. That would be my idea for reboot. And then really rebooted it, like with the original story. You can redo the story, and even with things we already know, but maybe with a new interpretation or new little tweaks. I would go with that.
You don't play as Garrett, you play as Larkspur.
Who's that?
Larkspur is one of Victoria's agents.
Okay, no, you and then you get a DLC where you play as Artemis, and
there you go. Just following Garrett. The whole thing is just a trailing mission where you follow Garrett.
Yeah,
the 2-player mode.
Oh, co-op.
So Garrett is not allowed to see you. Sorry, Jake. Like the 2-player mode, or like in Dark Souls where you can just invade, But in this invasion, you're not allowed to approach the player. You have to hide from him.
I wanna hand the mic over to Jake, but if you'll entertain my desires for the reboot after, I would love to give my thing out there, just in case someone's listening,
So Jake, sorry.
There's another. No, that's okay. There's another thing too. Is like what we want them to do and what I think they'll do. Because if you read, they had a press conference where they were announcing all these purchases, because they've got not just Thief, but they also got Tomb Raider. We mentioned, and Deus Ex and a bunch of other IP, Legacy of Kain, and they mentioned in the press release, and they named Thief in there, that we could expect the old games and potentially new games. So they mentioned in one of their press conferences and one of their discussions that not just Thief, but all these other series, that we should expect old and new games. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get both, but I mean, they name drop Thief when it comes to potentially seeing the old games come back and also seeing new ones. So that's something I think also that kind of keep in mind is what they will do. So.
And I think I just read the chat, and there's like Podenka, we need a Souls-like Hemorrhoid DLC. I think a multiplayer would actually be very interesting. But I think, of course, focus on the main game. Yeah, but for me, it would be like a reboot where they really focus on the gameplay and the atmosphere and the story, and don't try to do, I don't know, like fancy graphics that don't add. And stuff like that. And yes, no, I don't want Stephen Russell back for this.
Damn you!
I know. It's I know that
that's a hot take and a controversial opinion in this sense.
But let me explain, and I think maybe you guys can agree. Of
never agree.
He sounds different. He's not the young Garrett, and since we're talking about a reboot, we need a younger voice. I actually like the Garrett voice from 2014. But of course, it was like, compared to Stephen Russell, you cannot satisfy fans. But fans can be bitches sometimes. Sorry. Me too. And
you have no idea.
So I would go, if you reboot it, then reboot it correctly, and get rid of old stuff and do a proper job, but keep in mind what the original game is about and what made it so great.
I think that the 20th anniversary proves that like an older protagonist could work. We did have the mission with Connell, right?
And I found his voice very annoying.
I mean, okay, you know what though? I think the problem was the fact that when he jumped, he sounded like he was taking a crap. Not that his voice sounded funny. So every time he jumped, he went.
Yeah.
It sounded like he was dying.
I agree though about bringing Steven back. Is like, I love Steven, he's great, but if you look at other franchises, like they're making a new Indiana Jones movie. and Harrison Ford is like how old, and he's doing that again, and it's just like you don't want to see that.
I think that's fantastic. I don't think we have enough. Like I think we have so many franchises that just throw a new young person into the lead role, and nobody bothers to deal with the existential horror that is being an aging hero. Like imagine how interesting it would be to explore Thief as an aging Garrett. Like you don't have to remove all his abilities or reduce his mobility, just on a thematic level.
Yeah, but this won't work for the audiences, for a bigger audience. Most people don't want to play an old, or you have to introduce them as young. Like in Assassin's Creed 2, they did, like Ezio, they introduced him as a young guy, and then later, I think it was Revelations or what it was called, then he was old. So that works, because you grow with the character and you see him growing. But you cannot introduce like, old guy Garrett.
So if I may I?
Wait. An origin story is always interesting, and this is a good foundation to base other games on it. So that's where I'm going. Or
Garrett's departure from the Keepers.
What?
Garrett's departure from the Keepers, a game about Garrett leaving the Keepers.
I think that would actually be interesting if this part of the story would have, like a bigger thing in cutscenes or whatever. But I think like playing the origin and that would be cool. Like maybe even a bigger training and stuff like that. That would be cool.
Will you entertain my my thing for a moment here? My small rant. If I was an investor.
Yeah.
Okay. If I was an investor, if I was the owner of Embracer Group and I could control what happened with Thief 5, I would give the project to Crystal Dynamics because they have made another series that I really like, Legacy of Kain. And Legacy of Kain is all about examining the storylines from previous games and adding a twist to them. There hasn't been a sequel in Legacy of Kain that wasn't self-referential, so I think that Crystal Dynamics would handle Thief lore with an incredible amount of respect. And they also do platforming games. And I think that a lot of people think of Thief as a stealth game, but honestly, there's a lot of platforming in it that maybe that's more from fan missions, but like it's kind of become what people expect. So I think that Crystal Dynamics would handle that really well. And what I would do is I would give Crystal Dynamics as much access to the original design documents as possible. And then I would say like, okay, I want you to make a game where we hand the plot off to a younger thief, but Garrett is the thief that you play for the first half of the game, and it's old Garrett. And I want you to have old Garrett teach his apprentice the tools of the trade, and then I want some dramatic confluence of plot lines in the middle of the game where Garrett is removed from the table and you start playing as the protagonist.
Oh man, I'm so happy that you are not in the marketing office at Embracer Group.
I didn't say Garrett had to die. I'm just saying you switch control. At some point, you switch control.
This won't work.
Dishonored 2.
I think it can work.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. Like you need to introduce. If you have to do a reboot, you need to introduce Garrett. Garrett is like, without Garrett, Thief wouldn't have been what Thief is today.
Well, that's why you play as Garrett. You play as Garrett for half the game.
Yeah, but not as an old Garrett. Nobody wants to start with old Garrett if he never played Thief. They want to get into this. Like when
that's a fair point.
That's an interesting. You can do it in like Thief 3. Like the new Thief 3, let's call it New Thief then. New Thief 3, then you can be like, oh, and now he passes the torch to, and then it can maybe even the girl, that you see at the end of Thief 2 or something like that.
Keep in mind, my assumption here is that Thief 2014 never happened and we're going to ignore it when we make this game. So the protege would be who he picks up at the end of Thief 3. It would not be the protege from Thief 2014.
At the end of Thief 3, yeah, sorry. There's the girl. Yeah, and then you make Thief 4, New Thief 4 and
Yeah, just call it Thief 4 and not the fourth.
New Thief 4. Like it's like Nintendo would also do it. They would also call it New Thief.
New Super Mario.
New Super Thief. And then you can pass it like, or maybe during the end of New Thief 3. But you know, you cannot start with that. You cannot start with Gramps Garrett, you know.
So what if
Oh, so maybe Legacy of Garrett.
Oh, I've had a great idea. I have a great idea.
Another one?
Yeah, this one's gold. This one's solid gold. Embracer, I hope you're listening. Okay, so the game starts with old Garrett. He's speaking to his protege and he's recalling his early exploits. So we get the remaster and the reboot because we're talking about Garrett teaching his protege the tools of the trade through his memories.
The remaster Thief.
So we play a couple of classic Thief fan missions that are remastered and brought into the canon instead of playing original missions. So think of the best fan mission you've played. It's now canon and it's in the remaster or in the sequel, and then we hand like we a couple of really great fan missions get taken into the canon. You get to play.
You're lagging.
These recollections. My apologies. Am I back on top?
Can you repeat the last two sentences, maybe?
Yes. So you're playing Garrett's recollections as he teaches his protege. Since you're playing the recollections, you play as young Garrett, right? You're not playing as Grandpa Garrett. And then at some point, control gets handed off to the new protege, and that way we don't have to like do away with Garrett. He can still come in now and again. But we get that advantage of playing as a younger protagonist who's, you know, whatever people want, whatever your argument.
Why don't you want to play as Garrett? What's your problem?
God, now you're doubling back. You're doubling back, sir.
No, but what is that?
Grandpa Garrett.
What is your but because in your world there's just old Garrett, you know, like there couldn't be an origin story of young Garrett. Why you know, you want to get the old fans. You know,
but this is how you do that. You do that by having Garrett recollect his earlier.
Yeah, but Garrett is such a cool character. Why you want to replace him that early?
My God! So, like, I'm saying that you get both. You get Garrett having his recollections. You get Garrett talking about his past. You get to play Garrett leaving the Keepers or whatever fan missions you love the best. They're canon now. You get to bless a couple of missions with that canon blessing, you know, the Builder's Children now, and in addition to that, we're getting what you proposed for the series, which is a reboot. You said that you want a reboot and that you don't want Steven Russell back, but this is a way to get both sides on the team, right? You get the old players, you get the new players.
But Bodenka just said, why can't you give a player a choice or split the missions between characters?
That's a great idea.
That would be a good compromise, in my opinion, because you can have like the best character of all times in gaming, Garrett, and then you have Shelly.
Shelly.
Yeah, I think it's a great name, Shelly. Or maybe you can play as Victoria in some missions.
There must be a medieval-sounding feminine name that starts with a G.
Sheliotta.
Guinevere, perhaps? Garrett and Guinevere? Gwen.
Gwen, yes, of course. Amber.
Grunhilda.
Yeah. Yeah, my question is just why you want to replace Garrett. You know, why is that one of your first thoughts? Like, yes, of course, a new Thief game, and let's get rid of old shitty Garrett.
I'm not saying
nobody liked him anyways.
I'm playing off of what you guys suggested, which is that you want to reboot with a young protagonist. So instead of, I think you can only hold on to prequels and throwbacks for so long, and like I think that it's the natural cycle of life and death to move on. I'm not saying we should get rid of him forever. I'm saying we should hand it off in a respectful way.
Oh yeah, and then when you play as the new character, maybe Emmanuel just said Benjamin, Benny, or Henriette, which could be Hen, and she's throwing eggs or something. I don't know, but and then sometimes when she's like low on self-esteem, and then Garrett's ghost appears like in the Lion King, and then he says like, Benny, remember, and then you see like in a cool cutscene where he gets out his
Garrett blackjack pennies.
Bam, bam, bam. And yeah, that's a really mystical thing. I think it's really good that we are not in charge of a Thief reboot. And I think it's actually good if fans are not in charge of reboots. Because it's always like that. If you ask fans, like, hey, what do you want with the new game? And they would say, like, don't change anything. And then the new game comes out, and then they're like, oh, it's just the same.
Okay, so have you ever played a Sonic the Hedgehog game?
Yeah, the old ones, but for good reason, not the new ones. I don't like. I never liked Sonic. I think it's a hoax, actually, because it was never really fast.
Okay, so here's the thing. Sonic Mania was actually made by fans, and it is... So Sonic Team has this giant slump in their sales, where like games stopped being classic Sonic games and started being whatever new 3D Sonic is.
Werewolf Garrett, of course.
And then suddenly Sega hired fans to make Sonic Mania for Switch, and it was the best title they've released in a decade, and everyone loved it, and it was made by fans. So I think that actually kind of like flies in the face of what you're suggesting. Like,
you know what
I would hire FM makers to make the
we should. The next thing we should do is like get Skekki and Dana Nightingale.
Yeah, on this.
To get them into our studio, and then they can work something out. And then of course we would give Fire Mage an awesome job, and the art would be done by Dominus. And
French Decay,
and I will, of course, since I am the voice of the Thief community, I would do Garrett, of course.
There we go, German Garrett
with a German Garrett.
Yeah, you did say you like the German voiceover better, right?
No, I didn't say that.
I mistook what you were saying.
It's a good. It's actually good voice acting. So the voice is. It's two guys actually in 1 and 2, and the third one was in English anyways. But they both did a good job. But of course the original voice is awesome.
What's your favorite line from German Garrett?
Of course the inside at last thing, and he says, "Endlich drin."
That's beautiful.
It doesn't sound as... No, of course, he's not a Stephen Russell, But for a German, sometimes they pick a voice like, oh, Deus Ex. No, the German Deus Ex was better than in the original, in my opinion. But sometimes in TV shows, like, you watch it on English, and then you are going to a friend, and then you... hey, let's go on and watch the series. And then I recognize they're watching on German. And then I'm totally like uncanny, like, wow, the voices are totally wrong all the time. No, but that's what I said. Or let's do Fire Mage, the voice acting with his French accent for the French area. That would be amazing. I don't know. But I think that's the idea here. But Jake, you're so quiet. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I had an idea you guys were going off there, so I didn't...
Yeah, I think we're just so incensed we're not letting him get a word in.
So what is your idea? Maybe it's actually a good one.
Well, I thought of something as we were talking, too. I mean, you could have one protagonist you give two, but how about something maybe where you play as, like, Artemis before the events of either Thief 1 or something in between while he's training Garrett? Like, something maybe happens, you have some villain... like maybe some sort of keeper villain, somebody who's trying to throw kind of the city out of balance, kind of, which is kind of the recurrent thing with the 3 Thief games. And, either you can just play as Artemis, or maybe you can play as Artemis and then a young Garrett, and it's kind of like Garrett's first, big test, but it's not something on the level of Constantine, but it's something that kind of tests his skills. Maybe there's some sort of crime lord that is taking over the city, some sort of political revolution. I don't know. That's just falling off the top of my head. But
I had that idea. I had that idea for like some minutes ago as well. But for me, it's like, okay, if you want to introduce a character, and let's say Garrett in our version is the main character, and in Seth's version he dies in mission 2, and then you play as Shelly, and that's a great thing. But like if you want to introduce a character, you have to introduce him from the beginning. You know, it would have it would not work in a Batman movie if the first, you know, introduced like 1/3 of the movie just seeing Alfred. You know, you have to start with Batman. You have to start with Garrett, and to get to know the character, get to know his feelings, what he lived through, and what he was going through until that point where things go off. And if you start with Artemis, then it's like, first of all, an old man again, but I don't think it works. You know,
when he finds Garrett, though, he's not an old man. He's an adult, but he's not an old man. So that's my idea was, when I was just thinking about it, and like I said, just came to me, is like you could have him, and you know he's not an old man when he finds Garrett, and so you can introduce the beginning of the game where he starts and he's like, you know, you get an introduction to the keepers and all that and what they do, and then he finds Garrett. Garrett's a kid, and then he's, you know, training Garrett, which is in the Dark Project tutorial. But then they have like an adventure, some sort of adventure, or part of his training. You know what? When he's bringing Garrett into becoming a keeper, because that's really
but it doesn't. But that's not how you do that to get your players. Because you have to identify with the main character from the beginning. Like in Horizon. There you play as Eloy from the beginning. Of course, you have this mentor guy who's really cool, but he's just a side character. But you play as Eloy, you know, and you have to play as her because you have to go through this with her and not from a different perspective. And then suddenly you take over the main character. That's not a good writing and not how you intrigue players for this character.
What do you mean, playing as Garrett or playing as Artemis?
Playing as a different character at the beginning to introduce the main character later. You know, you have to start with the main character from the beginning. So, yeah.
I mean, isn't that what Dishonored and Dishonored 2 did? I mean, you have Emily in the first game, she's a kid, and then you can play as her in the sequel.
Yeah, that's a different game. But you play as Corvo from the beginning, and he's very important. You can do that later, as I said. Maybe in Thief 2, 3, you can change things, but you have to start with an important character. And I think Garrett, you know, why I don't know what your problem with Garrett is. Garrett is one of the most amazing written characters in gaming, in my opinion. Why do you want to why don't you want to play as Garrett, actually?
Garrett's like the perfect character to project onto. He has motivations, but they're so unclear. He just wants money.
Yeah, but I don't get your, like, why always this, you play not as Garrett for at least a part of the game. Why? You know, like, playing Garrett is amazing.
Because eventually we won't have Steven Russell to do Garrett's voice anymore. And unless we can, like, sample his voice and have a computer do it, at some point we will have to move on. And I want Thief to go on into infinity. But so, like, you know.
There are awesome voice actors as well. You know, you can have a new Garrett.
Russell's the best.
Of course, he's like defining Garrett's character. Yes, but
maybe we can make Garrett into a James Bond-like character, where like being the next person to play Garrett is super prestigious. You know what I'm saying? Like when they announce the next Bond, it's a huge deal.
I thought this format is a good idea, but I don't know.
Oh no. Should we swap topics?
No. I think it's interesting. I actually thought before we record, like, damn it, like, each topic will be like 5 minutes talking about, and now we're like 30 minutes, of course, into, we are already mixing in the original trilogy remaster thing, so we can check that already as well. But
we just have so much to fight about, Alex. Like,
yeah. But I don't get like. Of course, I want to play as Garrett. Why should I? Who? You know.
I don't not want to play as Garrett. I'm collating the arguments for and against, and I'm seeing Garrett. I don't want to. What's the word I'm looking for here? I don't want to like undervalue Grandpa Garrett. Like, I like the idea of Grandpa Garrett. I like the idea of exploring that theme of being an aged hero, because I don't think a lot of things do it well. I think a lot of A lot of titles explore it, and it's really trite, and the old hero just dies, you know. So I want there to be some kind of respectful handoff of the torch. I want the torch to pass from Garrett to a new protagonist, but I don't want it to just be as frivolous as a new game with a new protagonist, and I don't want there to be no Garrett involved in the handoff. So I don't necessarily want to see him disappear from the series, but like I think having Garrett as the mentor and someone as the pupil and have the player take over the pupil at some point is a great way to introduce new gameplay elements, a great way to
Also, I do agree with your
hand off the series, just not to do it too fast, you know.
What was that break there?
Was there lag maybe? But no, I agree with what you're saying, Seth, about like there is a lot of series that don't sort of respect, like you have like an older character. You know, there's so many series now they're getting brought back, and there's an older character and they just die or they come back and they're lame. I don't want to bring up Star Wars, but there's a lot of people had problems with how they brought back old characters. So there is something to be said about that. Also, I want to say that these are just ideas. These the ones I'm just spitballing. I'm just thinking of things. These aren't things I've like ruminated on. So I wouldn't be opposed to old Garrett. And I think too another thing is like it's all about execution too, because you could have like the best idea, but if you don't have a good team and good writers, it's going to be lame. And you can also have an idea that seems like it's going to be lame, but if you have a good team and you have a good group of people that can execute it well, it can turn out really well.
Yeah, and now we have a nice surprise. I think Gamified just asked me in the Discord if he can join the discussion, because
Yes.
he has an argument for what a new character would add. So Gamified, welcome. I think that's the amazing benefits of a live stream.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
First
Let me know if I'm
things
coming in.
First things
coming
first.
anytime.
First things first. Yeah, welcome as a guest. So, when did you first stumble upon Thief?
Oh.
Every guest has to answer that. That's
Sure.
the rule.
It was the Baffords Manor on, I think, one of these gaming magazines. I don't even remember which one now. Electronic Gaming Monthly, maybe? I installed it, and yeah, no other game, comes across as that immersive. Just the fact that the guard outside literally says hello while I'm ready to, like, attack someone and fight. I'm introduced as if, I'm just anybody. And that was a really cool thing that made it, what comes next, actually sneaking in, feel that much cooler.
That's what Pura actually told as well. Like the first guard is like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he was totally blown by it. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for joining us. So give us, please, your idea of why a new character would be a benefit. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that after the initial introduction to Garrett and then the subsequent fan missions, we're getting saturated with the world and the characters in it. And we're kind of forgetting that beginning, and I kind of alluded to it in the demo that I was talking about, is that it's important to sort of not know anything. Not really, take up the mantle of a character that everybody kind of knows too much about. And so if you were to try to sell the idea of like completely new protagonist, I think it'd be beneficial to just literally have a no one. And because that was the kind of secret in the sauce with Garrett. You get that short video in the beginning about him as a kid, and that's it.
I can see your point, yeah.
It's a pretty compelling argument.
What I think, what I can maybe add to that, because I think what the original games did so amazing is that they had so many, open ends and so many things. They just mentioned things here and there, but not always the final motivation or whatever. So I think that was playing a huge role in how players could, or authors could, do interpretation of their own on the whole universe, and I think that made it so intriguing, actually. So I can see your point there, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. I could definitely talk you guys under the table. Yeah, I mean, just to the fact that the world being a character itself, not really given to you all at once. You're piecing it together as the player. Um, you could tell that it was all about the stealth mechanics once they figured that's where they were going. And these are people that, you know, you can imagine they're probably running Dungeons and Dragons game on the weekend. They're very creative people. And so they were able to sort of build that around. And, you know, they're handing off duties to different people to make different missions. Then they're kind of like very on the fly piecing the story together. And it's hard to remember that when we have like amazing fan missions, right? But I think that whether it was on, you know, intentional or not, that does a lot for the idea of having sort of agency as the player. When you're telling me I have to fit a role, like I'm Garrett again, and everything that I've known about Garrett in those 3 games. Now it's sort of I'm playing as a character, right? I'm not playing as myself in some odd way. So I was sort of joking in the chat that what if it was just a random acolyte, like someone in the Hammer Order that had no chance of power or coming up in the ranks or anything, and he's like hearing about the legend of Garrett, and maybe you can do sort of a fan service thing of having them meet.
Something referential.
Right, but really you're just, okay, it's my daily duties until you figure out how to break out, until you're not tracked by the hammers, until you find a guild because you're misguided, because you think Garrett would want to be in a guild. And then you're slowly becoming and learning the mechanics of stealth.
I'm pretty sold on that.
So he's like, so I imagine it as like, you know, Garrett is still present in the universe, like, you know, his legacy, and this guy just maybe is inspired by him.
Yeah, so I wouldn't make a whole new game and just say, okay, we're gonna like take hints from it, because I actually do want that world back. I do want the hammers as you know them.
And then you always have like those, sometimes you can just hear like those far echoed Stephen Russell voice, you know, just old samples, like when he says, I don't know, let's call him
It's a long way down.
What is a good name for a character? Carrot. So no, I don't know, let's call him Simon. So Simon is just inspired, and then sometimes you just hear like this, like, yes, my friend. And then you have this cutscene where he looks above his shoulder, like Garrett is sitting there, and then it's like, yes, and then they can do it. I see that. I'm sold.
Garrett becomes his internalized second personality.
Yeah, right. Where was that? There was one famous gaming series.
I have no idea, but
or he's just like he doesn't have a portal gun, you know. It's like a thief gun, and then you know. And the soul of Garrett is inside that.
Man, I'm excited for the new Thief sequel where you play as Uriel now.
Burglar is the new game. No, but I think I see your point, but I always see the problem with like old fans, you know. But on the other hand, if it's well done and the character is in the same but different way as charismatic and smart and adds character, I think if it's well written, then it might work. Yes, and if because I'm sorry, but someone just wrote in the chat, like, that's why FM works so well, that feature new characters. It was Bordenka as well. I think this actually works really well in a lot of missions. So you have a new mind, so you don't have to, like old, you can get rid of old things, but you still have that universe, which is still, I think, the best character in the game.
Yeah, I think the beauty of this proposition as well, though, is that if you have mod support, players can still put Garrett into the game themselves. You know?
Yeah, or as he's like a DLC character or something like that. You know, you have to sell it. You have to sell it to the publisher as well. You know.
Yeah, I mean, part of this, and I apologize, Jake.
That's okay.
Part of this argument is like, the excitement you start to feel for this game, this demo that you got on this disc, when you go to school, and that was the age that I was, I wasn't like gushing over the character Garrett, right? I love him in the end. It's almost like he grew on me, but ultimately I was telling everybody, like, did you know there's like multiple levels of sound reaction? Like I can make a little bit more and then they heard me more. And there's a whole new like set of responses to that. Like that's what I was excited about and trying to tell everybody to play this game.
What I can see is like maybe this character Simon, he stumbles upon Garrett's gear. Maybe he finds his old hideout because he's already like a sneaky guy, and then by accident he finds this old hideout, and then he finds Garrett's gear and stuff, and then I think that would be a cool resemblance to Garrett, and a nice way of taking over. But Garrett, because I don't see Garrett as the character, who trains someone. So I think it would actually be more in the interest of the lore of the character of Garrett, that it's, that he isn't forced to do it, but, it happens somehow in a sneaky way.
This does sound a little like a Nancy Drew book where it's like, what happened to Garrett? Like
What?
you find traces of him, but he's not around anymore. So like the reward for new people is beating the game, but the reward for old fans is finding out what the hell happened to Garrett.
Yeah, where's yeah, and then no, but I think that of course it's like not the first time someone did that, but I like that actually, like someone's taking over from the legacy, but in their own motivation and ways, But
I think that so that works really well with Thief's like exploration pillar, and I think that would be an amazing way to reward players of the classic games, would be to hide hints about Garrett in the world that you only find if you look for them.
Or maybe, since Garrett is still close to the Keepers, he knows of a prophecy, but for some reason, I don't know, the Keepers are gone or missing or whatever, and you find out what Garrett knew, but nobody, I don't know, saw that, but you figure it out, and now suddenly you have a new thing, to save the city or whatever. And you have to find clues throughout the missions, maybe clues that Garrett left or something like that, so that Garrett is still like, in the background.
You find a rare gemstone called the Thigh.
Oh, the horn. No, but actually, Gamified, is it Gamified or Gamified? I'm sorry.
It's Gamified.
Gamified.
Really
So I think, so I'm actually very grateful that you gave our bullshit a bit of a direction that made sense, actually that was a really cool input.
Yeah, I appreciate being able to come on. I already like where you guys are taking it. I'd like the idea that, because this acolyte's very incorrigible, he gets out, he evades the hammers looking for him, or her, goes to, a thieves guild, gets roughed up, tries to hang there, and then you're sort of learning about Garrett from this third party view of how they feel about him. So there could even be mistrust of Garrett, that starts to come up in the character.
Man, imagine if he turns out to be the bad guy.
Nah.
You trust him the whole time.
No. That's not nice.
And then you kill him.
Right. Yeah, because he's sitting there in a chair, really old, yeah. No, but I think
we can call that mission the death of Garrett.
yeah, and the early years. Garrett's young years, I think it was. No, but I think that would actually be something that even old fans could work with. You get rid of old ties, but you still keep the legacy and the world alive.
Yeah, I think Seth's point, I believe it was Seth, that
the bad ones, yeah.
When you really want to, after all said and done, you enjoyed that experience of sort of like realizing your place in the world all over again with stealth mechanics. You also just have fan mission authors that can just completely take whatever, the new engine is offering and go ahead and make yourself, Bafford's Manor again.
That would be a thing. You would have to have an editor, which is today not a standard, actually.
Yeah, I think regardless of what the studio goes with, they need to include like a source development kit of some kind.
Yeah, but the problem is if they have a licensed engine, I think that might be pretty hard.
Nah, you can do it with pretty much any engine, Unreal or Unity.
No, but with
planning to do that with ours.
from the license, I mean.
Like the IP?
No, if you do an editor based on Unreal, let's say Unreal now, are you able to release an editor? So the editor must be based on Unreal as well. I know Unreal is for free available, but I don't know. But that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's what a source development kit is. It's basically a way to do that, and they can absolutely do it. It's just people don't do it because it's extra time and money, and you have to support it. And people don't really see it as a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, but I think if they would do the basic game right, that would actually be a nice thing. So I like that idea, and from that origin story of the new character, you can go on, and maybe you can have Garrett DLCs, or maybe Garrett he has dreams about Garrett, and then maybe you can relive like some of the original missions or something like that, or at least parts of it, which would be a cool fan thing.
If you 100% ghost the game on expert, you unlock the original campaign.
Yeah, of course. I think then they will either release an editor, talking of time and money. Yeah, but I think that's a cool direction. So now I hope Embracer listened. I think we did
certainly give a lot of ideas.
I'm still wondering what Dana's idea for Thief is. She didn't tell. But
I want to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, maybe in a private thing, but not publicly. I would say. Yeah, but that's really cool. I like that. So I think we now covered the Thief IP and the original trilogy remaster, reboot, or whatever. So should we go on with the topics, or is there anything very important to add? Jake?
What? Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. Still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
No, we clubbed him into sleep.
Don't overtalk him again, Jake. Sorry.
I was gonna say it earlier, but I was gonna say earlier. I do like the idea of a hammer acolyte, just because I think that's a cool perspective to take it from, and I also think that you could also thematically take the story in the direction of you get this character who starts out and they sort of believe in structure and like law and order, and they're very like kind of have more grounded principles, and then slowly you can maybe take them in that direction where they're kind of realizing that the city is not what they think it is. And I think that's a good way of like Gamma Fight was kind of saying, like you get that sense of like discovery again, because like you're playing as this character and you're going through that with them, and you're sort of realizing like, oh well, the city's corrupt and these various factions are kind of out for themselves. So I think that's actually a really cool idea. And then the acolyte comes to kind of maybe see things more Garrett-esque, as he kind of learns more of what the hammers taught him maybe isn't the only way. So that was what I was going to say earlier.
And what I see in a benefit in a new character is that you can use the already introduced world, at least to fans, and then there's place for a new faction that comes up, that's rising. It's the main enemy. I think that is always amazing.
Then you're gonna find out that this whole game just took place during the mission Undercover, and Garrett got too deep into his Hammerite persona and he wakes up from it.
Maybe. No, but I see the benefits in there as well, from a new character, and then maybe I don't know. That would be a cool thing to talk about one day. Like, what would be a new cool faction within Thief? Like, but I think with the Hammerites, the Mechanists, they already did, in my opinion, amazing enemies. So I think that would be tough, because next thing, what can you do? Like the Futurists. They already covered that with the Mechanists a bit, and then some magical-ish. I don't want that.
So I don't know if you want to save this, because I had an idea, but we can maybe put it in our pocket for a different time. But unless you want me to go on, but
just tell.
So
as long as you stay awake.
I'm awake.
Wakey jakey.
I'm good. I'm ready to go. So
Give the man a breath potion.
So my idea of another faction was, if you think about, like, if you existed in this world and you lived through the events, and this would be if there was like another game that followed on from Deadly Shadows. I should just have that as the background. So if you lived in this world, so you've lived through, Constantine, slash the Trickster, almost destroying things with the eye. You lived through Karis, nearly blowing everything up. You've lived through, Gamal and the Hag and all that. So I would think that the natural reaction for somebody would be is like, we don't need any of these clandestine factions. So my idea for a faction was sort of a almost kind of like an anti, theological sort of faction. They don't believe in the hammer, they don't believe in the builder, they don't believe in the trickster and the pagan stuff, and they kind of are against, they're kind of like maybe a faction of kind of anarchists in a way. That was kind of my idea, because you think about it, like, why would you want to keep putting your faith in the hammers or the keepers or the pagans if they're going to keep destroying the world, basically?
Yeah.
I don't have a name or a fancy name or a logo, but that was just my idea. Maybe, the Seekers, I don't know, something like that.
The Seekers.
The Seekers of Truth, I don't know, something like that. So
it's too close.
Yeah,
I like the
they'll
name.
Sing the world, they'll sing the world. They'll sing "There's a new world somewhere."
The
Seekers.
The sneakers.
The Sneakers.
So sometimes games and movies come up with stupid names. So the Seekers, I like that. It's close to the Keepers. So or the Givers. I don't know. The Givers.
Yeah, they give.
They don't.
Truth to the
They
population.
don't keep. They give.
I think there's a problem in that one of those names is a popular group from the 60s and 70s, and the other is a famous book.
The Giver, yeah. But
So, but now I think we can jump on to the next topic. And this,
who is the worst enemy in Thief?
Yeah, and it was based on I stumbled upon it on Reddit, and you can check out in the description. There's a document where you can find those comments. And it was posted by Fox427. And he was asking, like, what do you think are some of the worst enemies in Thief? I have two. First one, I hate the exploding frogs. They are hard to hit and do a ton of damage. They can also jump, making it even harder to hit them. Trying to kill the frogs is like trying to kill real frogs with an arrow in real life. Yeah, as we all know as we all did as kids. The other one I hate is the Mantis Men. They have lots of health and also do tons of damage. They can also block attacks and projectiles with the bugs that they spit at you, which is very frustrating. Another thing I hate is how you can't pick up and hide their bodies, which is a problem as it will alert nearby enemies. Those are my two. Yeah, I think it's a good introduction to that topic. So, Jake, what's your approach on this? What are your worst enemies? Let's stick with two for everybody, yeah?
So I would say Mantis Men would be one, and then Burks would be the other. And for
Did you say
Burks,
birds? Oh, Burks. I heard birds. Birds are my worst enemy.
No, Burks, because mostly for aesthetics and just like, I don't like the design of the Burk. I don't like the noise, the scream that they make. It's just, I mean, I guess it's supposed to make you uncomfortable, and it does make you uncomfortable because it's like, just ugly to listen to. And also the gas and stuff like that. But I mean, you could argue that that's kind of what they were going for.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and the Mantis Men, because I mean the commenter said it really well, but also the flies or the projectile that they use can also even go through like water, which I didn't know until I was playing Escape the other day, and I was like hiding in one of those pools, and the Mantis Men like shot me, and it went through the water and like hit me and killed me. So, and also because you can't hide the body, that's a really good point too. So those are mine.
It can run through water?
Yeah, I was in like the pool of water. So in Escape, there's those like pools of water that are like on the side of the wall because you're in. And I was like hiding in one of them, and he found me and shot me with the projectile, and it went through the water and like hit me.
Just the projectile. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
No, but I think craymen also are immune to water damage. I think the bug types are immune to drowning.
Which is stupid, actually. But
Well, crayfish breed in water.
So I would totally go with the Bergs because I think they are annoying as hell. First of all, I still don't know, and where are they looking? I cannot get a feeling of their sight, and they always stand for caves. So if a Burg appears, it's a cave, and caves suck. So and I think the frog beasts actually are really annoying. Back in the days, I hated the haunts and the zombies, but you get to know their mechanics, and now they're just like standard enemies. But Gamophyte, what are your favorite worst enemies?
Well, I was definitely not one of those that was poo-pooing on the introduction of beasts and everything like that when you're getting set up for interacting with human enemies. But it is a bit like I don't like the Burks, and I definitely don't like the Bug Beasts. Yeah, they both defy like sort of what you've learned looking, as you said, the direction of where they're looking. You get used to following a human enemy, hiding them. They both, defy that, and it makes them annoying. And I think the Burks are a little cartoony. Like, I'm going to burp at you. I enjoyed them in some way, but overall, they just, yeah.
I like the Burks as a character. I think I like them. They're cute somehow, and I like how they're introduced to the world, like fighting animals. People eat from them and stuff. But the rest, I think it's a mixed thing.
The Bug Beasts, it was mainly very annoying when you hit with the cloud of bugs. It turns into an action game. I do like the chittering. It sounds like they're smacking their lips is great. But it takes me out of it. I just imagine that's just someone with a chick that works there with reverb on her voice.
And Seth, what are your two?
I am restricted to default enemies, right?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay, so I have two, and one of them might be a bit of a controversial opinion. I think the worst enemy in the entire Thief series so far is the Trickster. And I think the reason he's the worst enemy is because he's built up to be the worst thing ever. He's built up in writing, he's built up in the FMVs, and you don't even interact with the guy. You don't even have an opportunity to sneak around him, barely. Like, you just run up to the pillar and you exchange something and he dies. You have almost no interaction with him. So I think that the Trickster is the worst enemy because he's the worst final boss ever. And my second opinion is that the bug types have to be my least favorite. I like them, but I think they're a missed opportunity in that was a spot the devs could do really weird things, like, have a firefly enemy that lights up every few feet, or like do something that's really going to screw with the player's patterns, and they just had big bugs you can't move instead.
Ooh. I totally agree. Someone just mentioned cameras.
Cameras are the worst enemies.
I didn't think of that. First of all, I like your Trickster thing, because I didn't think of that actually. But you're totally right. He's very disappointing. But I think he's not annoying as an enemy, in his mechanics. Like as a challenge.
He's just so predictable for the god of the pagans.
So I think it's a different reason for what we just said about the other ones. The other ones are annoying within the gameplay. Yeah. And the Trickster's just disappointing because he was built up so much. But I think that's a very interesting approach. But just reading cameras, who was it actually? It was Bodenka, of course. I think the cameras actually are annoying, and the bees, the children of Karos as well. So that's now I maybe need to change something. What do you guys think about the cameras and the mechanist stuff as in general?
Can I take up the torch? I know I talk a lot.
Do.
So I think that my counterpoint to other people not liking Burricks and Bug People is that the those are the enemy types that are like intended to mess with your play style, and I like that they do that by having like wide ranging projectile attacks. Um, they offer something more interesting than just a guard that chases you down and hacks you to death.
And that
Sorry,
that
I
was
lost the thread. My brain crashed.
again
Or brain not found.
no gin for you.
You restart, Seth.
Apparently, I need to IO myself. Ask me the question again. That'll put me right back on track.
The question was mechanist stuff, and you were going for what I found really interesting, that the enemies we just mentioned,
Cameras.
they scramble with your playstyle.
Yes. So I think the cameras follow the same thread in that the cameras are an enemy that like isn't intended to be super formidable. It's entirely circumventable and stationary, but it messes with your playstyle. It forces you to avoid a specific area.
But
And
may I jump in there, because just
Absolutely.
thinking of what you just said about the other enemies, but I think the mechanist enemies are more predictable. And that's what they
less
have
destructible.
They have a but they have a very predictable pattern. Of course, the cameras always, but there probably is a lever that you can pull, and then the thing is off, or you can shoot a water arrow into the back of the metal beast. And I think
What if I told you that's good?
Yes,
It's good
but
that
that's what I said. That's why I didn't think of the mechanist piece, because they are predictable more than the other ones. They are not such a challenge, in my opinion, and that makes.
I think Thief's best kept secret is that all the enemies are actually incredibly predictable. They're just good at simulating behaviors that make you think they're unpredictable. If they were truly unpredictable, you would hate playing Thief because they'd find you all the time and you'd never get through the levels.
Yeah, that's a base for a stealth game.
Absolutely, predictable, repeatable patterns. So I actually think that the cameras are great enemies. They're just maybe not executed in the best fashion, and they don't gate the levels in the way that they potentially should. Like, the cameras should be used to gate key choke points and patrol patterns, or they should be placed in places you would normally blackjack characters, so then it becomes about order of operations. Disable a camera, then blackjack. But instead, they're just kind of like arbitrarily placed near important objects.
Do they recognize bodies?
They don't.
No, right.
No.
Yeah,
I think there's some mods where they do, but not in the base game.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think they're maybe too predictable and too easy to work around, and the other ones are still another challenge. Yeah.
I was gonna say I agree with what you said, Alex, about I like the robotic enemies because they are so predictable and because there is multiple ways to deal with them, but they're also still intimidating. Like when you have those bombs coming at you, I mean, on expert, like that's intense. I mean, that's like some of the most damage that you can take in the series, I think, from an enemy. So
or like in the last mission of Thief 2, where there's that one area you have to jump over. I don't know, is it lava river or something like that? Mm-hmm. And then after you pull the trigger, and then you come back, and then think there's actually another metal beast suddenly, and then you really have to think like, okay, how do I approach this room? And because they are really hard, I think they're very, very dangerous, and you get the feeling because they're so big and they can block doors and stuff like that. But you still know, if I get in the back of this guy and I have a water arrow, I can deal with him, in a different way.
I was gonna say they're kind of two-dimensional. To me, they don't feel like enemies as much as the actual mission itself moving around. Like it's like terrain almost.
Interesting. Because I think
about the cameras.
Because the beasts are very sensitive to sounds and they investigate very early. So I think they're a nice threat, in my
I
opinion.
think too. I agree because also there's multiple ways to take them down. You can use water arrows, you can use fire arrows, you can use mines. They can be blinded with flash grenades and stuff like that. So there's also multiple ways to deal with them. I don't like enemies where things don't work on them or there's only one way around them. Because I think that's kind of, as I think everyone knows, like the bread and butter of Thief is doing different things in different ways. So I like them. Cameras I view more as an obstacle because cameras can't kill you. Cameras just bring other enemies and they can kill you. Like turrets and um, like the Children of Karis and guards and stuff like that. So
And annoying alarms. I
yeah,
really
alarms
hate
exactly.
Thief's alarm sound.
Yeah.
Nemfrey Folson just wrote worst enemy KO limits, and I totally agree. That's the worst enemy of the whole game.
Yes, ghosting requirements, worst enemy. But
Hey Seth, you had mentioned why are they just putting it by the most important places? And I like to think that that's like they don't actually know the power they have. Like they haven't. It's not been in the world long enough to think about full coverage. So they're just stupidly like, this is the most important place, and they just put it there.
something
It would be interesting in a new title if that was expanded on. Like it was in the world long enough to where like, okay, now we got this. We got this.
Well, some of the missions, like First City Bank, have random cameras too. Like there's cameras that don't always spawn in the same place. So that's also, I think, another factor too. Is you might play a mission where some cameras will appear one place and won't be there in the other. I know First City Bank has that. I'm not sure if I don't think every mission has that, but there's definitely a couple cameras that are randomly generated in that mission.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
So, there's ones because I've replayed that mission and done it again and like back to back, and I'm like, oh, there's a camera there this time and not there this time. I think there's a couple guaranteed ones.
Wait, which mission?
Yeah, First City Bank. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a couple cameras that are randomly generated. I might look this up real quick, but while we continue on, but
even when I think I know absolutely everything to the world, I will give this podcast a lot of credit. I don't think there's been a podcast where I didn't listen to it and I was like, I didn't know that. It's either something like the origin of a texture or the thought behind something, or like in this case.
Well, I mean, we're all obsessives here,
Yeah, and we have no idea either.
Yeah, I'm completely unsure of anything I ever say. It's all caveat emptor, right?
I have info. So this is from the Circle. It says this mission is designed so that every time you restart it, the guard population and camera locations are rearranged. In other words, areas that might have been simple to navigate previously may now be complicated by extra guards or cameras and vice versa.
I think what this means is that First City Bank is the best mission because it has procedural elements, and that's what's missing from a lot of Thief missions is replay. Like they're replayable, but they're only so replayable. Imagine if Thief 5, and I'm very sorry to take the conversation back to that battlefield, but imagine if Thief 5 had more procedural elements than the preceding titles.
I'm divided on that. Because I like it when I know it to the fullest, and I know what is coming. But on the other hand, of course, it's always like, which, even if you played it many times, okay, there are like 5 different ways, like the key in eavesdropping, that where it changes the location, and like, okay, what is it this time? But yeah, I can see the benefits in that.
I like a very carefully crafted experience. Those random elements, it's always like a great idea in principle, but yeah, how well will it be executed to sort of still stay in line with that crafted experience? That's my only worry.
Well, you can craft proceduralism, right? Like you craft it by saying, okay, the guards will be on one of these 4 tracks. The tracks are picked by a developer and they're play tested, and you know that they work well. You just don't know which it's going to be. So you apply that same logic to other elements, like key locations or whatever, and like you only need 2 or 3 options to make it almost infinitely replayable, because if you have 2 or 3 options for guard paths, 2 or 3 options for camera locations, 2 or 3 options for key locations, that's already what's 3 times 3 times 3. Like, that's already that many different ways you have to play the mission, right?
Maybe you can give an early indicator, that as an experienced player, okay, if this guard is standing there at this location, then it's this setup for that. So you can early, adjust to this, so you can in your head make your route through the level. And on the other hand, now there's a metal beast walking, so it's this setup now. So I have to do this approach, because I think experienced players like it when they know their stuff and they know what to do, and they just enjoy to do it in a very cool way, But if there's random elements, then it's always like, okay, there's always some random stuff in there,
That's why you gotta get like seasoned FM playtesters to be your playtesters on Thief 5, because they can give good feedback like that.
I don't think it's a good idea to have, but just some. You need very different approaches.
Yeah, you get 2 control groups. You get some seasoned players and some new players.
But that's what I said. If you ask the fans, what do you want for the next game, you never get a good answer. And none of them is good, because they are at one point they are like, oh yeah, we don't want to change anything because we love the game. But if anything or nothing changes, then they're like, yeah, it's just the same game. Why didn't you improve?
Well, I'll just say that my point of view for Thief is the correct one. So
exactly.
How are any of us going to deal with aging?
Knocking out everybody.
Yeah, I agree with in terms of random generation, just to kind of put a bookend on that. I mean, it's a tricky thing because I think that you don't want to have too much random generation where, like you said, Alex, people that do know the game, like kind of going through the motions and kind of executing what they know is the correct order to do things. I think how Thief 2 handles it is how I would want a new Thief game or, another Thief experience to handle it, where you randomly generate like certain elements that kind of tip the scales just a little bit in either direction, but it's not so radical that like the level's being completely rebuilt or something like that, So like the key and eavesdropping that's always in different places and the cameras in First City Bank, I think those little touches of procedural generation are ideal. So
Spambot Fodder just said that the First City Bank camera placement is based on the second count in your system clock.
I didn't know that.
I bet that means the mission plays completely differently on new machines than it does on old machines.
Interesting.
Different clock speeds, right?
Yeah, different clocks. It's different times now, Then I found another one because I found it very interesting where we ended up from worst enemies to random placed enemies. Then there was someone mentioning a navigation mod for Thief, and I thought this was very interesting because he asked, it was Butterschnitzel. I like that he must be German, so it's Butterschnitzel for you English-talking people. Thief 2 navigation mod. Navigating is often really hard to me. Yes, I know the yellow area on the map shows me roughly where I am, so I think he means the highlighted area on the map. But it's still very confusing to me. Is there a mod where I can see exactly in which direction I'm looking at and where I'm on the map? Or do you have some tips? Call me casual, but this is pretty exhausting to me. I feel like a maze runner.
Well, I think it depends whether or not you're role-playing or not, right? There's 2 different schools. You're Garrett, and so you should know what he knows, and therefore it should show you on the map. Or you're Garrett, and you're figuring it out for yourself, so you have to use your compass.
I would say it's, in general, the map system is part of the experience, and I think most Taffers would say like, hey, that's part of the game, it's important. And So I think there won't be a mod for that because it would maybe benefit like for 3 players in the community. But I think, and I can understand that, I found it interesting that he said it in Thief 2, because I think Thief 1 is way more confusing. But then today I thought about it, like how many confusing buildings are in Thief 2? And I thought, like already the second mission, like the harbor area or the docks can be already confusing for the first time or second. Then the police station is already pretty confusing. Then you have Truard's Mansion. Of course, the bank can be very confusing. Then Angel Watch Tower can be very confusing. Then masks and casing the joint can be very confusing. And of course, the last mission can be very, very confusing as well. So I can see where he comes from. And maybe he plays for the first time. And some people maybe don't have good skills and orientation. So I think it's an interesting approach. But what do you guys think, Gamified and Jake?
I agree. I agree with what you said about, I don't think there'd be a demand for it, because I think everybody that makes Thief mods and Thief maps is going to be like an enthusiast. I can't imagine that many enthusiasts are like, this game needs a quest marker or something. But in terms of, yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree with what you said, Alex. Like Thief 1 was the game where I got lost more. When I played Thief 2 for the first time, Sabotage at Soulforge, like you mentioned, was one where I got lost. And but other than that, I mean, most of the maps are squares or they're square-like. So if you just keep going, you usually can find your way. I mean, there's a couple buildings that aren't the most intuitively laid out, but I really didn't feel like I needed to even use my compass much in Thief 2. It was mostly using the map. Whereas in Thief 1, when a mission, Alex, I know this is your favorite mission, the Lost City, I had to use the compass all the time.
Oh yeah, I yeah, of course, Lost City and yeah, favorite, best mission ever.
Those missions like in Thief 1 were ones where I struggled with, but I mean, you just use the compass and it helps. I mean, it doesn't lead you necessarily right there where there's a flashing thing on the screen that says, oh, you're here. But if you follow the compass, and also a lot of the places have signs on the wall, or there's text or something that will indicate where you're at. So
Jack Sparrow compass that always points towards the next objective.
Yeah, or just a marker inside the game,
Oh God.
In the HUD.
A waypoint?
Yeah, like
Go here, do this.
Or maybe like a Grand Theft Auto style, navigation system with just a line. No, but I can still I can see it. It can be very confusing. On the other hand, I think that it's actually part of the experience. And when you master a very confusing level, you are very satisfied, or you hate it, like the Lost City. But you have an emotion, But Gamified, what's your approach on that?
Yeah, I don't mind sprawling missions if it feels like you're enjoying yourself. It's a treat, right? You're lost and but you're enjoying, the mechanics and everything like that. So, and as you said, as you start to kind of eke out and understand where you are, there's that reward. I would also say though, it should definitely be a give and take. Like the one previous shouldn't be, and the one after maybe should be a relief from that. But I really do enjoy when it looks like you're in a garbage heap and you're trying to sort of figure things out. There's definitely a place for that. I can't remember, kind of a recent-ish fan mission for the contest. Someone, and I apologize for not remembering, sort of did a, I don't know why I'm blanking on the original fan mission here. Basically the walled off quarter, right? Where you just have sort of buildings falling apart and you're literally ducking underneath falling buildings to go into the next place. And then there's the sewers, and then you start to actually get a feeling like it might be bigger than it really is. I like that feeling.
I love when I'm playing a mission and I'm like, I don't know where I am. I'm in a new spot.
It also feels weird when you actually circle back to the same place and you realize you're looking at it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Oh, that's
I've been here before.
Yeah.
I love when missions connect areas in unexpected ways.
But it can be also very frustrating when you think, oh, now I finally found a new direction, and then you end up at a place where you've been minutes ago, or where you started maybe, and you were just running in circles.
Well, I mean, that means... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just doing...
I was going to say that's why I say as long as you're enjoying the experience. Like, if the author is like very careful to, have you use your tools as you're exploring, like you are roping over to an area, going up, as long as you're sort of, I mean, in a way, as long as you're entertained, like there's plenty to do as you're lost, it can feel great. But certainly, and I've played fan missions where it's a sprawl, but there isn't that reward. It's like, okay, I just want this to be over now. What's my objective? And that's not, that just comes down to design, I guess.
What I just thought about today is many newer fan missions do that. With the New Dark and stuff, you have sometimes very complex and huge city missions. And then, if you're lucky, you get a map. And very often, you can see that they just screenshotted like the above view from the draw mat of the level. And then they created, in Photoshop, they created the map of that. And suddenly, the whole city map is very confusing because it's very detailed. There are so many lines and there are roads above and each other, and there's buildings. And then there's also the street names also written in there. And sometimes those maps are, in my opinion, more confusing than they actually help. Because sometimes you're like, okay, is it that building? This looks similar to that. This could be that. And it's more confusing. And I think that's a problem many newer missions have. Yes, they often do it like they give you a whole overview of the city, and then they part it in maybe like 4 different detailed views. But still, it's sometimes too much. I liked actually the maps that Garrett fills out during the progress, where you just start with a rough thing, and then you can see, oh, now there's a new part on the map, so I must be in a new area, and this helps, and you still need to do your orientation within the level, so you get to know the map. This is actually my favorite part of, but I think it's very, more time to invest, of course, to do that.
I think it works the best because you... I think when you couple that with the compass, you know exactly what cardinal direction you need to go to a new space.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of whether or not you know how to navigate the space, if you look at the map and north is north, like up is north, you know that if there's a giant vacuous blank space to the north, you need to go north. Like, it's probably where the objective is. I think that's just the best marriage of the design and the function.
For what I really hated was the map of the second mission in Godbreaker. Wait.
I haven't played Godbreaker.
Oh man, but
oh no,
you have this map and it shows you stuff, but it's actually sometimes a bit more confusing or irritating because sometimes there are like symbols. Pictures on the map that seem to be important, but at the end they are not. They're just there for art, and this is a bit misleading. So I didn't like. I hated the orientation in the second mission of Godbreaker actually, and the map was not helping either.
I have a good excuse for not playing. I actually went to play it like on release, and I couldn't get it to run.
No, let's be honest. You always say that you hate Random Taffer, that you really dislike the guy.
What?
And that's why.
I've never said this.
No, you wrote it in the chat.
All contributions to beef are valuable.
I sent Randy Taffer screenshots already, so he knows.
My career is over.
Yeah.
Since I'm here, I'm going to say shout out to Random Taffer. Thanks for letting me be a part of that project.
It's your fault as well, okay?
The very specific project.
So Seth will also hate you now as well, Gamified. I'm sorry. But I don't say that. He just writes it in a secret chat where we hate about the community.
You know that cool skull lantern? That was me. Thanks.
Oh, that was amazing. I like that. Yeah, that was
Well,
creepy.
now I have to go play this.
It's a really great campaign. If you can ignore that old man's voice.
Connell, yes, in Godbreaker, Connell.
And after that, you have to listen to the episode about it, because that was very interesting stuff he told about. I don't want to spoil anything.
I skipped it because I hadn't played it.
I'm just telling you, when you play Godbreaker and you are in the second mission, just get into a building or a rune, look out of the window and look over the swamp that is in your back at the start. Just saying.
I'm looking at it right now in Angel Loader.
No, that's not helping. Don't in game and then look over the swamp that is in your back at the beginning, out of the window of a rune. Just saying.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
No, it's not creepy. It's just interesting. There's no jump scare or anything. It's just like, yeah, it's intriguing.
I am not installing the fan mission right now.
Yeah, we just have our last topic actually, and I left it on purpose without a question mark at the end. It's Thief 4, a good game.
A shameful statement.
It makes no sense. I know.
A contentious statement.
But Wavy69, also on Reddit, wrote, "Is Thief 4 a good game on its own? I've always thought Thief 4 was a pretty solid game on its own, right? But a bad entry in the Thief franchise. I replayed it recently, and without the context of the previous games, I think it's pretty alright. I'm curious as what y'all think."
I'll let someone else go first, because I have the most vitriolic opinion, I think, of all of us.
I'm definitely out. I never actually played it, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a lot of you guys, because I have to admit I haven't either.
So it's just Seth and me. So I replayed it. So I would have agreed with that statement before I replayed it for the stream. And after that, I didn't finish the game with the stream for reasons. I would disagree now. Because out of my memory from 2014, I was always like, yeah, it's not a good Thief game, but it was a good experience in general. But after replaying it, it's such a mess. This game is such a mess. And yeah, we will do one episode about it one day.
We should do a group playthrough where, like, Alex has the keyboard, I have the mouse, and Jake has the voice. That'll be fun.
Like
might add to the fun, actually. Yeah.
We'll do Thief podcast plays. Inside at Last plays Thief 4.
So, but to the statement, I don't think that even without Thief, it's a good game in general, because it has so many flaws. There are sound issues all over the place. You know, sometimes a character screams in your ear and he's far away, and then suddenly you are close. There's just a wall and with a hole between you and the conversation, and you can barely hear one of the participants of the conversation. And they are important to the story, by the way. Garrett is not the character he is. Okay, yeah, that's Thief. So without Thief, even then, it has too many flaws, and it's not really fun to play, actually. It has a lot of potential, but you can see that there were too many people talking about the direction of the game.
So I did purchase it, and I had planned on playing for that sort of, why not? Biggest thing that I saw that really, and you just touched on, is the sound. For me, the original Thief series is all about sound, and that's where, in my personal opinion, my gameplay is mostly anchored in. So if that sound isn't right, it's just gonna be a terrible experience. I mean, they had a lot of sound issues with the original Thief, right? And then they're like, we have to build a complete system around this, and that's why you have these room brushes. And then that finally made it work. And you just get the feeling maybe with the new title, they just skipped over all that.
And also, when you speaking of the importance of the sound, what's also not working is that all the NPCs are talking in, yes, realistic, but not helping voices. They are always mumbling inside themselves. There's just one scene where you have to follow a drunken guy, and he is like behaving a bit like Benny, and that is such a highlight in the whole game, because he's suddenly like he's acting, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, this gave me a feeling of that what Thief is about. And we discussed it on the podcast a lot of times, that the goofy guards and characters are so important to the atmosphere, because they are adding life to the world. And here suddenly the guards are just talking like, and this is not working. It's just, I don't know. It's just generic.
What I've had the game in my Steam library too, like Gamified has, and what's kind of put me off is the style of the game. Like, I watched a lot of your playthrough, Alex, when you were playing through, and I just like looked at the art, and it just like the visual style does not appeal to me. I also know that in the game, if I'm not mistaken, and I will play it eventually, but don't you have to pick up each loot like by hand? Like, there's not just click and it's in your inventory. You have to actually like
That's
pick it up.
that's in my opinion, that's pretty cool. I like that immersion with the hands, but opening every wardrobe, and that is so annoying.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like to me. I was like, this is something that's kind of cool, because you can imagine that they might have had this in the original had they had like the technology, the animation, stuff like that. But it's also one of those things where I was like, this looks so tedious to like open every single drawer and like to have to like take everything out and stuff like that. So
And that's why I always say that a new Thief approach can never satisfy the fans of the old Thief game, because there was no animation for everything. It was just gamey. Click on it and you have it in your inventory. But now games, you have all those animation. I'm just thinking of I'm just playing Sniper Elite 5, and which is a cool game. I like it. But
I immediately want to jump to inappropriate questions, but I'll let you go on.
But or like in Assassin's Creed, when you search a body, you always have that animation. In Far Cry, they had the same. I think they got rid of. You could get rid of it in the option. In I think Far Cry 5, they started with that. But it's so annoying, because nowadays you have all those animations. But hey, Seth, come up with your inappropriate questions.
Oh, my inappropriate question was about about the game you're playing. It's completely off topic. I don't know if you want me to ask it.
Huh? I don't get it.
Sniper Elite.
It's a great game. And the thing is, many of the enemies, because they're Nazis, and they have a similar hairstyle sometimes to me, and it's sometimes like killing myself.
Classic German self-hatred.
No, yeah, when I came home with that hairstyle for the first time, and my stepfather saw me, he was like, like, yo, you with your Nazi hairstyle.
He was like, yeah, he had questions.
Nah, he knows I'm not a Nazi. No, but that's sometimes a strange feeling, like, this guy looks like me.
The gunshot in the middle. This guy looks like.
Yep.
No questions.
So yeah, Thief 4 is a good game.
I have a game dev take on Thief 4. My game dev take is that Thief 4 had a lot of talent on it. Like, it's very clear that it was coherent at all, because the people involved were they were really good at taking different elements and blending them. So it has some kind of linear coherence that it wouldn't have had otherwise if there wasn't talent involved. But the problem is that there was so much, in my opinion, investor interference in the project, that it became, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, they just like they took all the creative direction away from the project and prevented it from becoming something that the devs had agency in and something that they could have pride in, and it became something that was more of an exercise in making sure it was a safe investment. So like they neatly avoided anything that would confuse the player. They neatly avoided anything that would make the player like upset with the game design, but at the same time they made it so safe that nobody could enjoy it. It was like both too sanitary and too, I don't know, carefully arranged. And like the fact that there were areas where once you jumped down a ledge you couldn't climb back up. I was like, what is this? This is just so far from the original Thief design that it's not even, it's barely on brand at all, you know?
As I always say, you cannot recreate the feeling of the first games because of the engine and modern game technologies and standards.
But from my game perspective, from my perspective, that's not an issue of can you or can't you, because the fact of the matter is that in current engines you can do anything that old games did. But the problem is that there are conventions that investors wish to observe now, because they look at subsequent titles as safe investments. They don't look at sequels as a way to iterate and to push the medium. They look at sequels as, the first one was a guaranteed success. So I want you to replicate all the things that made this a success with taking no risks. I don't want you to take any risks. You know, I want waypoints. I want the player's handheld. I don't want there to be any ability for players to get confused or lost. And I think that Thief 4 really feels like a game where like all of those extremes of like, don't let the poor player get confused were like taken to their logical conclusion. I will admit that I didn't beat the game, but my observation from the time that I did play and from watching other people's total playthroughs was that like the investor very much wanted people to buy this game, run on the rails, and not get lost or confused or upset at any point along their journey.
Yeah, and I think that's still the misunderstanding, because when you see like games that are suddenly hits, like unexpected, they do exactly the opposite of that. Like Minecraft, like how was that fantasy Viking multiplayer game name that was so successful for a while, or Players Unknown Battlegrounds or Battle, you know.
It's a twist on a familiar genre.
Yeah, and I think that's like the opposite nowadays. Like, okay, suddenly things like that work, you know, and they are fun for different reasons because they are not streamlined, you know. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just wanted to add, like Bricknose said that in Thief 4, Garrett felt like a kleptomaniac stealing forks and knives out of the dwarves of peasants, and that was a running gag during the stream I did, like with the chat. We always like, oh yeah, it's that certain scissor everybody was looking for, you know. And now there is again. Yeah, the game. Nothing felt like any worth, you know, any worth to it.
It was all boiled down to what could be made into a commercial product, and I think that that's the thing with Thief, right? It's like, yeah, Thief is a classic and it's an established game and it has a long-standing community, but the community that Thief has exists because people have had a lot of agency in basically branding Thief. Like Thief at release and the Thief that we discuss on the podcast are like two different entities, because we discuss Thief as a thing that has 2 decades of fan content that define what it is. And I think that ultimately releasing the game with an SDK Thief/Dromed, and like giving people the agency to decide what the game would be is what makes Thief that we understand.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why we haven't talked about very many Thief 3 fan missions on the podcast, you know?
But that's something for a different day.
Sure.
We are almost at 2 hours now.
We're hitting our mark.
No, that's not the mark, but I think that, you know, for Taffers talk, we are at a fine thing. But maybe Jake or Gamified want to add anything before I will lead to the introduction.
I was going to say, just to kind of put a bookend maybe on our discussion in regards to just where Thief is going to go, I think that not having it in Square's hands is going to hopefully be a good thing. I think that Embracer has done a good job with some of their other games, some of their other remakes and other continuations. Specifically, Destroy All Humans got a remake that was very faithful and true to the original, and the SpongeBob game they did as well. So they've had a good track record of sticking true to franchises, even when it means keeping mechanics that are maybe not the most mainstream. So I am kind of cautiously optimistic is my take on it. You know, I think that they've been a good steward for other franchises, and I'm hoping that if Thief does come back, that pattern will continue. So
yeah, like Jake, I'm hopefully optimistic. I think a challenge for any new Thief game, and I was going to talk about this, and hopefully this doesn't start a whole new hour, is that when you have, because you know it's going to be obligatorily on a newer engine with light and sound, you know, what was beautiful about Thief is the simplicity of, like I mentioned, there was like 6 different ways to react to sound and 6 different ways to maybe being saw. Well, you could sort of see that gradient actually on the floor with that older lighting. And the challenge is going to be how immersive could these new AI be? How many different types of reactions, you know, that gradient's going to get finer with better lighting to make sense of seeing, kind of getting a video, an audio feedback of the player, yourself, and the world. That's going to be a huge challenge in trying to make a modern Thief game. So if they're willing to you know do that, you know, I hope, but it's not something I'm fantasizing about as I lay down at night. It's one of those things that'd be a wonderful surprise.
What I always think is like, do we really need a new Thief? Because, you know, we have people that work still on Dark Engine missions and even campaigns. And then we have the Dark mod, you know, which in my opinion is an amazing mod, or a total conversion now, and standalone thing where you get so many great experiences. So do we really need a new Thief? You know, I think, I don't know. But yeah, you can discuss this for hours.
My fantasy is to have all of us group buy the IP, like every single TTLG member all buy the IP. And it's like, now we own it, and now we get to put in that work. Because as Seth was saying, just how the industry is right now, are they going to really put in that labor of love that would be demanded of a game like Thief?
I'm happy you said that, because my very next thought was going to be like, what if we bought the Thief IP and Thief 5 was just the SDK?
There was one, I think there was a forum thread on that one time where someone said, like, couldn't we just put it all together and buy it?
Sorry, I lost you for a moment there. Could you repeat that?
There was a forum thread like where someone mentioned this, like, hey, couldn't we just throw all together the money and buy the IP or something like that?
I don't know. Is that how it works?
No, it's not how it works. You know, it's the same like Nex or other streaming of Stephen Russell having them in their fan mission.
We'd have to make a by my understanding, a holding company, which we would all invest in, and then the holding company would have to buy the IP, and then the holding company would get to make the decisions. So we would still end up with the same centralized structure at the top, just because of the way game dev works.
So thanks for listening, fellow Taffers. No, Gamified, you wanted to add something?
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, you'd have board members, right, of like the top favorite fan missions, as scored on, that newest website that escapes my memory.
I'm imagining a comedy scenario now where like we're all board members, but also like top FM authors are.
I don't want to go into that role play right now, actually.
No.
So I will cut it here. Sorry, but yeah. That was the first Taffers Talk edition. Don't get confused. One of the first episodes was named that as well. But now it's the real Taffers Talk. Let us know what you think of the format. Thanks for the chat. It was very active. And thanks for Gamified for joining us and getting our Thief IP thing into a good direction that we can build on. And thanks Jake and Seth for joining, of course, and thanks for listening, and thanks to everybody. Thanks. See you next time, and bye. Now it's the time where you all say bye.
Bye. Baby, bye.
Where did he go? Guess there must be another way out of here after all.
Good. And we end the stream.
Thanks for having me.